Real E-Savvy Radio, your guide to more informed. Today, Christopher Cox talks with Dennis Miller, real estate instructor at the Triad Real Estate School, about obtaining your North Carolina real estate license. Later, Christopher talks with Dr. Kimya Dennis, sociologist and criminologist at Salem College, about the stress and challenges associated with purchasing a home and how to have a good experience during a sometimes difficult process. Let's get started.
Welcome to Real E-Savvy. My show today is going to focus on is a real estate career for you. I just went through it. It was intense. North Carolina, for the second time in my life, went through it. So, I had the nerve to invite the person that took me through all the drama to sit in the class, to sit on my show. I'm going to put him on a hot seat. My real estate instructor, Mr. Dennis Miller, who is actually an excellent real estate instructor who gave me a lot of great information. Good afternoon, Dennis.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. It was a rough start, so again, I wanted to ask you, how does somebody make that, because everybody always says, well, not everybody, but a lot of people say to me, how do I get into real estate? And before I go to that, I'll ask you to tell me more about your background. Or tell the listening audience about your background. Okay,
about my background, just real quickly. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. Got out of the Marine Corps and moved to Houston, Texas. Went to University of Houston at night for 7 years. Thought I'd never graduate, but I finally did. And I got my degree in accounting, and for several years I was an accountant, controller, finance VP of a few companies. And in 1986, moved to North Carolina.
I want you to go back to the story about the paint store. I heard a paint store story.
Oh, paint store story?
Yeah,
okay.
Paint store story.
Okay, well, my first real job out of the Marine Corps was working for a paint store in Houston, Texas. $3 an hour. As my daughters say, that's the caveman days, but it wasn't that long ago. Slave labor, doing everything nobody else wanted to do. One of my jobs there was change prices. Every time we had a price change prices. And at that time, they didn't have computers and gadgets and everything. You had this stupid gun you had to push and put $2.98 and pull the trigger and get a sticker out and stick it on. Well, my first year there, 5 times, I had to change prices in the whole store because prices increased 5 times. So that was kind of about half my life. And it took me like two and a half days. And sometimes by the time I got through at the end of the month, they said, Miller, got to do it again. Got another price change. So, again, I ended up being a slave laborer, doing everything nobody else wanted to do. But it really taught me a lot to be successful, you kind of have to go over and above what everybody else does. You can't just do what everybody else does. You have to do the things nobody wants to do and do the things you don't like to do and do them well. And everybody has to start at the bottom. And a career in real estate is just like that too. You have to start at the bottom and kind of climb up the ladder, do the right things, the smart things. It's not rocket science. It's just doing the basics very well. If you can do the basics very well in the real estate industry, you can be very successful. Okay.
Do you have any advice on personality type or economic situation, scenario that fits best?
Yeah, well, let's talk about personality types first here. Everybody, I think a lot of people are familiar with the 4 personality types, maybe bulls, owls, lambs, and tigers, or different names to them. I think some people are hardwired. I think you're born with certain personality traits that help you more in a people-related industry, particularly a selling industry. You like to talk, you like to listen, you have an outgoing personality, and people like you, and they're attracted to you, and so that helps a lot in this industry. Some people, I think, are born very mechanical, like accountants and scientists, engineers, very methodical, very mechanical, and I think sometimes to make that transition from that kind of industry into sales, they have to work a little harder at it because it's not their natural personality to be outgoing and to talk and to listen and things like that. So I've had a lot of people do that, but it takes a little more get up and go, a little more oomph understanding of how to get out of the box you're in and get into the sales, the real estate box. Now, one thing I found in my classes is almost everybody, if I have a class of 50 people, almost everybody is in a state of transition. They're going from somewhere to somewhere. Maybe where they are, where they've been, maybe they're just recently retired. I've had military people, retired people, a lot of teachers, people teaching for 3, 4, 5 years, and they don't like that anymore, so they want to do somewhere else. Or maybe you just have a job that's a dead-end job, or maybe you just can't stand your boss, something. So, people want to make a change. So most people are in a transition, and in that transition, somewhere they've thought about getting in a career in real estate. And most of them don't know anything more than the man on the moon. They just know that maybe they had a real estate agent help them and they liked what they did, or maybe they've met some real estate agents and some real estate agents say, hey, if you ever thought of a career in real estate, I think you'd do real well. I've hired a few people that were kind of recruited that way. The transition, so because you're in that transition stage, there's also a transition of going from whatever you're in to becoming a real estate agent. Because generally, when you're a real estate agent, you are on a commission basis, which is tough for most people. It's quite different. If you're used to getting a salary of this or whatever it is every week, 2 weeks, or a month, and then all of a sudden things happen or you don't want to do that anymore and you get into real estate and you go to work for a firm and they'll say, we're on a commission basis. When you sell something, you get paid. If you don't sell anything, you don't get paid.
Right.
So that's kind of, different people can make that transition easier than others, but our suggestion is, and most financial people will say, you probably need at least 6 months of income saved up or have those resources somewhere so you can live reasonably for 6 months without starving yourself or going into debt or without any minor or major financial problem. Because it takes a while. It generally takes a couple of months to get the kinks out, and then you have a sale and it takes 1, 2, or 3 months to close. So somewhere between that 3 and 6 month mark is where you're going to see money coming in. So you have to be able to kind of overcome that hump, and that's scary for some people.
Let me go back to where you were when you digressed for a minute. So how did that happen for you? You came to North Carolina. That's where I stopped you.
Okay. I came to North Carolina. I worked for a furniture company in Salisbury. I was their finance VP or chief financial officer. And after 3 years, the company was sold twice and was on the verge of being sold again. And I just didn't want to go through that road again. So I came home early one day, about 2 o'clock, drove in the driveway and walked in the house, and my wife said, you're home early today, how come? And I said, I had a great day today. I quit. And not the best thing to say, as you can guess. So we had a discussion about that, and she was probably much more than I was. She said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I want to go into sales. I mean, I've always had this sales personality, and I have, these salespeople, they make a lot more money than I do, so I'm going to go into sales. She said, well, you've never sold anything in your life. And I said, I know, but I've read every sales book, and I think I can do it. So I kind of started interviewing in the sales area, and nobody had hired me because I hadn't sold anything. So I went on an interview in Hickory, North Carolina with Oakwood Homes and talked to them, and I was surprised, as you can get, when after the interview, talked to 3 people, they came back and said, Miller, we'd like to hire you. When can you start? And I about jumped through the roof because I said, God, I finally got a job, got hired. And we talked, and it was on a commission basis. And that's the reason they hired me, because if I didn't sell anything, they didn't owe me anything. Yeah, it didn't cost them anything. Yeah. So, it was tough. You started out at the bottom, and I had kind of, to learn a lot of real life sales skills. But fortunately, through the years, things got better. And, as you learn more and progress more, you kind of expand your horizons and knowledge more and get where you want to go. So it was, that was the start. You always have to start at the bottom. So that was my start into the real estate industry.
So how did that evolve to teaching?
How did that evolve to teaching? Well, I knew the first night at University of Houston, my first accounting class was from 6 o'clock to 7:15. I knew.
That's a good memory. I can't remember.
I knew when I walked out of that class that I wanted to be a college professor. I just knew it the first night. And so it took a long time. I graduated there in 1980, and in 1982, still working for the oil company and things like that, I started teaching at some colleges. And through the years, I've taught at several colleges and universities on a weekend night, or now I actually teach at 3 colleges online, so I don't have to go anywhere. I can do it online too. And I also knew back in 2001, when I took my real estate school in Raleigh, North Carolina, after sitting through 4 hours of real estate school from 6 to 10 Tuesday night, when I left there on my way home, I said, I want to be a real estate instructor. Because that person, and I remember his name, I remember him, and he was having so much fun up there, and he was very good. I said, I can do that, and I want to do that too. So I got my license, got my broker license, and in 2002 I started teaching real estate in North Carolina. And it's been a passion of mine. That's what I do now full time. I still sell a few homes a year, but most of my 6-7 days a week is teaching, instructing real estate.
So what's the first step for someone if they decided, okay, it sounds good so far, okay, I'm watching this.
Well, what's the first step? If somebody's thinking about real estate, the first step I would suggest is go talk to some real estate agents. Go talk to some real estate agents and ask them, what do you do? How do you do it? I've had people in my classes that say the reason that I'm here is because we just bought a house a year ago, and my agent, he and I just hit it off together. We just, synced, and halfway through the process, he asked me, have you ever thought of being a real estate agent? So the first thing I do is talk to an agent, see what they do, how they do it, see their lifestyle, and see if it's something you'd like. And after you do that, then, again, you have to enroll in a real estate school. And I'm affiliated with 2 real estate schools here in the Triad. One is Triad Real Estate School in Winston-Salem and Elliott Real Estate Academy in Greensboro. And have to sign up for the school. It's a 75-hour required course by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. It's challenging.
It is.
It's not the easiest thing in the world, because think of this, when you get your real estate license, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission is saying, we are charging you with the responsibility of guiding people through making the most important financial decision in their life. Whether they're buying a house first time, or move up, or maybe their last house, or they're selling a house. For most people, that's the biggest financial decision in their lives. And they need an expert to do that. And the North Carolina Real Estate Commission says, we want you to be the expert, so when you do that, you know how to go through the roadblocks and the mines and the tricks and traps of getting them to go from A to Z. So it is challenging, but a lot of people do it. There's over 98,000 real estate agents in North Carolina right now.
So active agents.
98,000, probably 90,000 of them are active.
Okay.
89, 90,000 are active. But they all have to do the same thing. The school hasn't changed in 15 years. When I took my class in 2001, it's 95% the same as it is today. The same big book, the same hours, the same tests and everything. So it's challenging. So that's the first thing you need to do, is get in a real estate school, make that commitment for that 75 hours to really put forth a dedicated effort to pass the school test. Then you get to take the North Carolina state exam, and once you do that, you get your license, and you go to work for a real estate firm, and you're on your way.
75 hours of class time. So, I truly want you to make sure, because you said it in class, and I believe it, because not only my personal experiences, but people I've met that say, oh, I have my MBA, and I had to take it twice. I don't feel stupid. So, you have to translate that, please, for the listening audience.
Okay.
In addition to that 75 hours, how much time should they set aside to study?
Okay, that's a good question, Chris. And my suggestion, and most good real estate instructors will say, you probably need to study between the 75 hours of class. You need to put in at least 8 hours a week study time. Because there's a lot, that book is like 800 pages thick. And there's 21 chapters, and we go through all of those. So besides the class time, whatever that is per week, you need to kind of just discipline, I think is a big word here, of find at least 6 to 8 hours a week of you can just sit down by yourself, disconnect your cell phone, your iPad, your iPod, your TV, your kids, your spouse, your dogs, your cats, disconnect everything and spend that dedicated time, because that's probably what it's going to take to get from A to Z.
Do you think that, just the commission sat down and said, whether it was back in 2001 or where we discussed it, and said, let's make North Carolina the toughest? Because he said, I'm saying that funny, but this ranks up there in the hardest real estate exams, right?
Yeah, well, North Carolina is probably among the top 3 states to get your real estate license. All of them are tough to a degree, but North Carolina is probably a little more tough because of the 75 hours. Classroom, they don't have any online pre-licensing. You have to go to class. Some states you can get your license online, which is fine. I don't see our commission ever doing that, going to online.
That was going to be my next question. Do you think that would ever evolve?
No, I don't think they will, because kind of think of it this way. If you broke your arm and had to get your arm fixed, and you went and saw a doctor, and you're sitting in his office looking around, and you see his medical doctor from University of this state, online degree. How comfortable would you feel versus going and sitting in some office, say medical degree, Wake Forest University, with all these Phi Beta Kappa and all these things? Well, you'd probably want to go to the Wake Forest University person versus the online degree from some state. And I think that's the way the commission looks, because, again, a lot of responsibility, a lot of knowledge, that you just get from a classroom. You have great instructors and great students. You learn a lot just by talking to the instructors. So, yeah, I don't ever see us going to an online pre-licensing courses.
There's different licensing, as far as appraisers or salespeople. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. When you attend school, pass the school exam, 75 hours past the school exam, take the state exam, you become what is called a provisional broker. North Carolina is a broker state. You're a broker license on provisional status, which means you're still learning. Then you go and work for a real estate firm, and once you go to work for a real estate firm, you have 3 years to take what are called post-licensing courses. There's 90 hours of post-licensing education, and that 90 hours gets you from a provisional broker to what's called a full broker. So once you pass that 90 hours, within 3 years, you become a full broker, and that's when you become more independent. That's when you can actually, if you want to, you can go become what's called a broker in charge, open your own firm if you feel like doing that, or become a broker in charge of one of the other firms and kind of manage the firm. A lot of people like to do that. But you have to take that 90 hours within 3 years to get that provisional status removed. And there's a lot of education. It's at least 30 hours a year. Not as intense as a pre-licensing course, but it's still a lot of information taught by very, very well experienced instructors.
This seems to be, interest rates have stayed low, consistently low. Mm-hmm. They say, just from watching the news, not experienced it yet myself, that the economy is doing excellent. Mm-hmm. How has that affected, you taught in class how Raleigh is so hot, and I know for a fact Charlotte has got to be hot because I have so many friends that moved from up north to go there.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, there is, for the most part, I think everybody knows what happened in 2007 and 2008 in this industry and many other industries. About fell off the face of the earth. Everything was going almost straight up 2006, and then 2007 hitting halfway through, it just kind of fell off for a lot of reasons that we probably may not have anything to do with. But for the most part, most areas have risen back up and are at least equal to or above the 2006. As an example, there's a economic statistics called leading market indicators, which a bunch of economists get together, and if you look at Raleigh, North Carolina and Charlotte, North Carolina, they're above the national leading market indicator line. Because in Raleigh, if you list your house today, everything's in order, the price is right and everything, you're probably going to have 8 to 10 offers in a week and they're going to be full price or better offers. Charlotte is not too far behind. Charlotte's right on the tail too, and that's a good, healthy economy. When
you don't think there's any trouble going back to 07, 08?
I don't.
Because those are maybe just because those are individual markets, not a national.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing happened in that financial collapse was called the subprime market, where builders and lenders loaned billions of dollars to what are called people that didn't have A credit, maybe B, and there's not everybody has perfect credit, but they kind of extended themselves to subprime credit, and that caused a lot of issues. That was a big part of the collapse. That doesn't happen anymore.
It does. It's coming back.
It does. Well,
it's called non-qualifying.
Yeah,
there's a non-qualifying market out there.
I hope that's a very small part of the market, because today to get a loan, it's much more stringent. The underwriting is much more strict, so you don't have that big subprime portion of loans that maybe become foreclosures or people become delinquent on, and things of that nature. So I can see it maybe happening, but I think it'll be more of a financial Wall Street type of initiative to move that than the subprime market.
We talked prior to coming on the show about the low supply of existing homes. Is that a national trend, or is that do you identify that with just those specific markets?
Well, the low supply of existing homes is a national trend, and there's several reasons for that. Number one, through October, nationally there was basically a 4-month supply of used homes on the market, which is a very tight supply. Generally, you like to have 6 months of used homes on the market. That's kind of what's called an equilibrium market there. 4 months is very tight, because what that means is that there's not that many people selling their homes. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one is the millennials and the Generation Xers, people are living in their homes a lot longer than they used to. It used to be 30 years ago, every 6.5, 7 years people moved. Now that number is up to, depending on who you listen to, somewhere in between 9 or 10 years people live in their homes. So they're not selling their homes as much. Another factor of that is the low interest rates. Interest rates are still low, but everybody is afraid that they're going to start going up. So if you're locked into a 20, 30-year loan, I have a loan in Myrtle Beach that's 2.75 interest rate.
You're never touching that one.
No, it's going to take a lot for me to move and get a loan that's even 4%, which is still a great rate, 4.25%, great rate from what we've used to. But I'd rather stay there with a 2.75 than sell that and buy another house and have a 4 or 4.25% interest rate too.
And rates have gone up to 4 now?
Sometimes, some places there are. They go up and down occasionally, but typically the 30-year rate right now is probably between 3 3/4 and 4.
Is the market, and having not paid as much attention to it since I've been in banking, is the market still subsidized? Is it artificially low?
Well, I think so. The government has done a lot to keep interest rates low. In 2000, as an example, in 2006, a typical interest rate was probably somewhere between 6 and 8%, and that's a low rate. In the 80s, if you bought a house, it was 12, 14, 16%. And people going houses were not anywhere as near expensive, so everything kind of equals out as far as the payment goes, but the interest rates were 12, 14, 16, even sometimes 18%. So with the markets at 3 to 4%, yeah, the government subsidizes a lot of those, and it's artificial.
And that prevents inflation.
Yes, it does prevent inflation. And that's one of the things they want to do, is kind of so we don't get back to the 80s or 70s where we had 10, 12, 14% inflation some years. 2 to 3% inflation, which is really around 2% is what it's been lately.
Getting back to licensing, and something that I forgot, that slipped pop back into my mind.
Okay.
And you talked about the 6 months of savings to go into the industry.
Yes.
How much would somebody budget just to go through the classes and pass and become a realtor? That's just an expensive process. I'm still trying to figure out how much when my pocket's going to stop.
It's a never-ending sometimes. It never ends. Most real estate classes are $450, maybe $500 with the text and everything. So somewhere you can budget somewhere between $450 and $500 for the 75-hour class. Then you take the state exam. It's maybe $95, $98 now. And then you go to work for a firm. Well, most firms are going to require you to join what's called the National Association of Realtors and the North Carolina Association of Realtors, which is a trade organization that has a lot of benefits, the main thing being access to the local MLS. And that costs about $1,500 a year. And to join
for the Board of Realtors,
yes,
and the MLS.
Yes, yes.
You're not including the cost that you just said, the other $500.
No. So you're going to have, $450 to $500 for the school. You go to work, probably $1,500. So you're going to have probably about $2,000 sunk into this within 3 or 4 months, the time it takes you to get through the school, take the state exam, and go to work for a firm. And then most financial experts, and I agree with this, suggest that since real estate is generally a commission basis, you need to have probably 6 months living costs saved up, so you know that you can live comfortably for 6 months without upsetting anything, because it may take you a month or two to get your first sale, 2 or 3 months to close. So generally the first 3 months you may not see any money coming in, but after that, if you get off good and get to a running start, month 4, 5, or 6, you'll start getting a pipeline going, and then you'll start replenishing those funds. But probably 6 months living expenses is a very realistic thing to plan for.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about the industry, and you've given a lot of great information that I haven't asked you that you'd like to talk about?
Well, yeah, a couple things, Chris. Number one is in 2016, the average age of students in real estate classes was 29 years old. A big change. 10 years ago, the average age was about 37 or 38 years old. So the last 10 years, we've seen a big influx of younger millennials, Generation Xers that maybe think differently than you or I do, but they want to get in the industry at a very young age.
I'm Generation X.
Okay.
No, you missed this. Maybe Y. It was Y.
Generation Y. Yeah, Generation Y. Okay. But I have a class now of 44 people in it, and probably 10 of those, I would say, are in their very early 20s, maybe right out of college. A couple of them are still in college, too. So people are starting to maybe see the attraction of this industry at a much earlier age and going into it. And with the millennials, and particularly with the electronics and all the electronic world today, the industry has had to adapt quite a bit to the younger generations coming in, so they can get out and work on their cell phones, their iPads, and not even have paper anymore. So that's one thing that the younger generation is going through. The other thing is real estate, I think, is the best industry there is. I was in my mid-career, really, or almost in my mid-career, when I made that transition to get into real estate. And it took a while, but it's the best thing I've ever done. And if people get started in that and get cemented in, say before they're 30 years old, get their license, mid-late 20s, and 30 years old, get going, they can have a tremendous career. Tremendous career they like, that has a lot of freedom. You have to have an entrepreneurial spirit, because you're not going to have somebody kicking you to be there at 8 o'clock and lunch from 12 to 1 and all this stuff. You have to be able to manage your time and be able to have all those disciplines. But this industry is, I think, by far the best industry, with almost 100,000 people in North Carolina having licenses. That's a bunch of people that are involved.
And I was going to go back to that when you said the numbers and the age groups. Do you foresee it becoming a saturated market of real estate agents?
Do I see it becoming a saturated market? And my answer to that would be no. And the reason is because we've all heard of the 80-20 rule, right? And that's true in real estate just as well as anything. In real estate, maybe real estate is maybe the 70-30 rule. Probably 70% of the people, or 30% of the people, make 70% of the income. And everybody has a different comfort level of where they are on that. And there's 30% that really want to be up here, and there's the others that are content being here, and that's fine. But I don't see it being saturated where there's 200,000 and everybody's just making $30,000 a year. No, I don't see that happening.
Okay.
Because there's checks and balances that I think will prohibit that.
Okay. Well, again, I truly appreciate you coming on and making my audience real e-savvy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good to ask you questions as opposed to reverse. I had a good significant amount of time for that. So thank you, and thanks for watching another episode.
Real E-Savvy Radio continues. Dr. Kimya Dennis joins Christopher Cox in the studio to discuss the stress and challenges associated with purchasing a home. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Real E-Savvy. I got my first, my first two-time guest, Dr. Kimya Dennis. She's back. She likes to take over this mic. I'm going to try it work. When I have a psychologist on my show, I have to remember that's what she...
I'm a sociologist and criminologist.
She has a PhD, so, she kind of does this for a living, so I have to watch myself.
Start from scratch. My name's Kimya with a long E sound.
Okay. Thank you. Well, can we talk about your recent study and the work that you're doing in East Winston?
Yeah, so we're doing work on East Winston right now. I'm working with economist Dr. Megan Regan, who's also faculty with me at Salem College, and we are visiting fellows at the CSEM Economic Mobility Department at Winston State University, and we are interviewing and surveying residents of East Winston to talk about housing conditions. That includes costs, what comes with the costs, how people feel about their neighborhood, lighting, people rent, own, their salary, and all sorts of other questions. So we've already completed the survey part, and everyone who did a survey got a $5 Food Line gift card. So I'm still doing the interview part, so I have about 6 more Food Lion $10 gift cards left. So if people want to participate, they can contact me. You're like me. You have to be a resident of East Winston. Yes, I will catch you if you're not an East Winston resident, because I'm going to ask you enough questions during the interview, it'll eventually come out. So yeah, so you can participate. It's about a 30-minute interview.
How do you sign up?
Well, people can actually email me. So it's my name, Kimya.dennis@salem.edu, which is KIMYA.DENNIS@salem.edu, and we can schedule the 30-minute interview. You can come to campus, wherever you feel comfortable. It has to be a place that's quiet enough for a recorded interview. And it's confidential. So the surveys and the interviews are all confidential. Your name's not used.
What else you got going on? You always have something good going on.
Well, thank you.
And you just had completed something else, right? Was that?
Well, I'm always doing something. So I do work in mental health, suicide prevention, reproductive freedom with emphasis on our communities. And that includes, I'm planning now a de-stress event at Triad Cultural Arts.
I'm glad you brought that up. Mm-hmm. Because now it's going to segue into home ownership and Really Savvy.
Yep.
Which is... The whole process of buying a home is so stressful, or trying to refinance, and you have your children, you have your job, you have everything going on every day. Going through the process of doing things that you may be doing for your first time, but surely not more than your second or third time in the course of your life. What can you do? What are some tips that you may have to
de-stress?
De-stress.
So it's very interesting because it's cultural. You and I've talked about this before. A lot of people think that stress is just a part of being black, for an example. And if you're stressed out, that's just life. But there's actually something you can do about it. So we talk about people taking a break, taking a step back, putting that paper down, and just closing their eyes for a few minutes and just breathing in, out. For a lot of people, they're like, what's that supposed to do? We'll give it a try and see how it feels.
So if it doesn't work, what does that mean about you? Because I've tried that and it doesn't. But go ahead.
Well, it doesn't work because you're expecting it not to work.
Okay.
Negative Nancy. But no. So a lot of people, that's why they start cigarette smoking. In addition to the nicotine, smoking has that breathe in, breathe out. So one way that experts tell people to help quit smoking is to forget the nicotine part, of course, which is the addiction part, but go outside, breathe in, and breathe out. Because you'll notice a lot of people when they're going outside to smoke, it's like they're stressed out. They're like, oh, that person get on my nerves. And they go like, whew. Well, the breathing in, breathing out meditation component is supposed to have the same effect. You're taking a step back. I tell my students to do that when they're working on paper, studying for exams. Put it down, breathe in, breathe out.
Okay.
So the home ownership part, whether you're trying to purchase a home, you're trying to get a mortgage loan, whatever the case, it's a stressful experience. I experienced that. It's exhausting. You have to know who to trust as well in terms of taking their advice. So this is why I recommend doing your own research and comparing the information that you're receiving just to make sure no one's lying to you. Because unfortunately, in many communities, there are mortgage lenders and other experts who think you don't know any better. So they'll tell you anything because they think that you haven't done research either way. So that also can reduce the stress if you've been reading, if you've been talking to people. In Winston-Salem, for example, we have a lot of Black, Hispanic, white, Asian home sellers and realtors. We have people who actually have expertise in this, who will talk to you for free, depending on what you want. So that's a good outlet to find people who have a conversation.
I just had the opportunity to go on Winston-Salem State's campus today for the Urban League and and your sorority.
Sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Yes.
And the home buyer seminar that you guys put on. And it was great, and everything that you said and all the components were right there and available.
Yeah. I mean, there's information out there. We have organizations that's a component of what we teach. That's part of the economic development component. We're not saying everyone has to own a home, because it used to be that when you grow up, you have to buy a house. That's not really the motto anymore. But if you choose to be a renter, you have to do a cost-benefit analysis. You have to ask yourself, the money that you're putting in renting, does it cover cleaning? Does it cover repair? Does it cover lawn, landscaping? Does it cover anything in the neighborhood in terms of safety? If it does not, you'll have to ask yourself, should I be renting still? Because a lot of renters don't realize they're actually spending way more money than they would if they were owning their home. So that's the cost-benefit analysis. So,
and that also goes to what type of home, because you can purchase a condominium.
Yes. Townhomes, condominiums. Yes, you have to see what you want. Like for me, when I was looking at my house, I looked at all of that. Condominiums, townhomes. And I had to be honest with myself. I like space. I don't like shared space that much. So that has to also go into it. I mean, because when you purchase a home, it's not something that you can just contact the landlord like, I got to move out next, year. That's your house. You'll have to sell it, and you prefer not to have to put it up for rent. Trust me, you do not want renters living in your house, if preferred. So you have to decide if you want a condominium, if you want a townhome, if you want a separate house. Because if you want a separate house, that's also a component. Do you want a house with a homeowners association? Some neighborhoods you have no choice but to have a homeowners association. They don't give you an option. So then
and the rules to those organizations can be kind of tricky at times.
Kind of extremely tricky. Very tricky. You want to know. I was about to do Run DMC. It's tricky. But you have to know what you're getting, because you have homeowners association fees monthly. And that includes townhomes and rules. So some of the rules are really good, though. Like you can't park your car on a lawn.
Or on the street.
That's a good idea.
Sometimes.
Yeah, on the street. In my neighborhood, thankfully, they don't do the street thing, but they say you can't change your house in a way that could possibly ruin the property value for other homes. You can't park your car on the lawn, because that can ruin your lawn, and that's something that usually can't be reversed even with a good landscaper. I'm ready for them to start regulating people's dogs, and I'm saying this in the camera. I know you love your dog, however...
you talking about Sheba? Well, anyway,
I love dogs, but I just need people to know that your dog can attack people, and dogs are legally considered property. No matter how much they're your cousin, they are property, and they can be killed and all sorts of things. And you cannot sue people for killing your dog if your dog comes at them. Okay. Even if your dog looked like it was wagging its tail, people can legally kill your dog. So speaking of stress, I just had to throw that out there. As a criminologist, I had to throw that out there. So yeah, so when we talk about stress...
And the host that has an American Bulldog, and you that was personal.
Yeah. American Bulldog. Bulldog, I love dogs.
But we're not going to digress. So,
that's
going
part of the
back
stress
to,
process,
I mean, what about recommended for the whole organization process? Okay, you say, I'm buying a house. How do you compartmentalize all of these things in good advice that you just put out? At what point should you say, okay, I'm going to sit down and start an action plan on how I'm going to change my life around to accommodate the stress factors that are about to enter into my life?
So it's the whole procrastination thing. As soon as you think you might want to purchase a house, take a step back and say, have you accumulated enough wealth? We're not talking about being a millionaire. We're talking about having something in your savings account. Because especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck, literally, it's going to be very difficult to get a mortgage company, bank, whatever, to give you a mortgage loan. And a lot of people forget about this part. You have to pay a down payment for a lot of houses. So let's say you're about to, sign off on that house, and they're like, okay, $3,000. And you're like, $3,000? Nobody told me that's going to happen. The bank, for example, would have to see proof that when you give them that $3,000 to start off your mortgage contract, that's not all the money you have. Because now your house is going to go automatically into foreclosure. Like you won't be able to afford the first mortgage. So these are all things that I recommend people do years in advance. Sit down. If you have a tax preparer, you prepare your own taxes. See what's going on. Look into your bank account. If you have stock options, 401k, retirement, whatever you have, look at it. Because living paycheck to paycheck is unfortunately very common in the United States of America, including people who live in a mansion. That doesn't mean that they're wealthy. It means that they make enough salary to afford a mortgage in a mansion. If they got fired tomorrow, you don't know that they'd have money in their savings account. That's the difference between wealth and income, right? So this is something that we always want to talk about. So if you want to de-stress, you got to plan years in advance and start talking to people. Talk to people at the Urban League Young Professionals gatherings. We have people who do a lot of wonderful work there who can talk to you and help you plan ahead and also help you be honest about what you need when you buy a house. It sounds so awesome when people say, I want a 5-bedroom. A bunch of stuff that you don't need. Like, what are you really going to use? Like, for me, I'm a minimalist. I like vintage old clothes. I like small houses. Because in my mind, life is way too short for me to be stressed out about whether I can pay for stuff. There's way more fun things to think about. So think about this. If you're purchasing a home, you're doing it for you. Don't try to impress your family. It don't matter what your mama said, unless she's going to live in the house, and especially if she's going to pay part of the mortgage. Other than that, your mama going to have to go to a hotel room if necessary. Don't get a whole bunch of rooms if they're going to just be there collecting dust. No one's going to stay in it. Don't get a whole lot of space if you know it's not going to really be utilized. And because you have to remember, heating, cooling, all that stuff, if it's all on you and you're not with the landlord, it's all on you. When things get broken, it's all on you. So the best way to de-stress, the best way to minimize the stress in the first place is to plan ahead, talk to people, start saving money, tell yourself, okay, I'm going to give myself 5 years to eventually be able to afford a mortgage. I'm going to choose a realistic place to live, where's a safe place to live. And once you get that house, or once you're through that process of buying a house, be able to take a step back and breathe. On Saturday, March 31st at Triculture Arts, we're doing the Community De-Stress Program, and we appreciate anyone who wants to donate some bottled water. I know bottled water are bad for the environment, but if you got some natural spring water, somehow that's not a bottle, that works too. Natural snacks for people, so some healthy fruits, vegetables. We have Dr. Marilyn Granger, who is awesome. And she is the yoga expert. She's donating her time to show our community how to de-stress through yoga. So I tell people, even if you cannot move your arms and legs, even if you cannot stand, Dr. Granger can still show you how to breathe. And that's important because in our communities, a lot of people hear the word yoga and they're like, oh no, that's the devil. It's not, I promise you. We have thousands of years of history of different cultures in which there's some form of meditation. So you can use your time to meditate in prayer, whatever the case may be. What we want is for our people to put pause on life for at least 5 minutes a day and marinate. And so that's included in the home buying process. You gotta pause.
Okay.
You know, what's the point of buying a house if now you're gonna be pulling your hair out literally because now you got a house? Like, every life decision cannot bring stress. That's bad for our mental health. That's bad for our physical health. And that's just, it's teaching future generations that life is meant to be miserable. And I don't believe that. So we gotta breathe. And don't say you're too busy to breathe. Girl, log off Instagram and breathe.
You gonna teach me?
Yes, like people get in their car and they spend 10 minutes trying to find music to listen to. Take that 10 minutes to breathe.
Okay.
Breathe. Yes.
Thank you again. Thank you, Dr. Dennis.
Breathe.
For coming on. Back to Real E-Savvy. I hope it didn't take all that. But anyway, again, I hope this helped you become real E-Savvy, and I hope you... Oh, that was a hint.
De-stress.
Breathe. Anyway, thank you.
RealESavvy.com has resources to help you become more informed about home ownership. Visit the website and stay tuned for the next Real E-Savvy radio broadcast with Christopher Cox every fourth Sunday at 9 a.m. Real E-Savvy Radio is a production of RealESavvy.com and is produced through the facilities of Southern Broadcast Media, LLC.